Okay, this will only take 2 minutes, and yes, I'm going to greet you again. So this is my 2-minute preamble of housekeeping because look, I made the tiniest of little errors that I could hear in my listening back to this episode. And yes, I re-listened to all of my episodes the second I finish recording them. I just start playing it back and I listen to the whole, whatever it is, an hour, 2 hours. So here's what I picked up on right away. You're going to hear me go through some numbers throughout this episode. For instance, years, timelines, and some of it may not add up well. For instance, I was talking about my pickup artist years, and I say something like, oh, I worked there for over 2 years, and yet then I introduced in the timeline, I got hired in late 2017, and I left the company not even in late 2019, so it's not even 2 years. I don't want anyone to take that out of, please don't let that take you out of the world. It's only a reflection on me not always being the best with numbers. I'm pretty sure I have dyscalculia. All of my number mistakes that I make in this episode is just a reflection of a life that I live regularly. So it just is what it is. Think of it as charming and accurate to who I am as a person. Next on the list was, yes, the pickup artist stuff. Look, yes, this is following right after the PUA stuff. You know I'm not done that conversation. A part 5 is warranted, and it will be the last one, and it's coming. I'm not ready to have that conversation yet. I want to let it marinate, and I'm going to stay on schedule with how I initially set out these show ahora episodes. And what was my final thing? Oh, yeah. This is the episode where Garbage Babe, the chapter, gets her flowers. And that's the best thing ever. You get to hear my passionate energy in this episode as I'm discussing the things I did in my early 20s that I'm really passionate about. I get some plastics wrong. Like I refer to HDPE as HDPD. Yes, I'm a nerd, but I'm a hot nerd, okay? So my version of nerd isn't like, get the plastics right. My version of nerd is just know how to throw the right plastics where they belong and have really hot arms while I do it, okay? I'm that kind of nerd, so please forgive me. And that's it. Now I'll let you actually be greeted by me right here. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Spencer. You are listening to my podcast, Show Ahora. Welcome back or welcome. If you're new here, that's all good. I'm going to be taking this episode and probably the next 2 episodes to be discussing ayahuasca. Ayahuasca. So this first part of the ayahuasca experience, if you are new here and you really don't know me, that's okay. I think we'll get along here. I'll probably do a little bit of contextual callbacks to aspects of my life I've already shared, because parts of me that led me to drinking ayahuasca were obviously the parts of me that had identified deficiencies and sadness and emptiness and anger, the things of me that I would have wished to have healed. So if you've heard my lore in some of these past episodes of Show Ahora, you would kind of understand already a little bit of a context there, but I will do my best to just cover it as is. So ayahuasca, what is it? Now, I was just doing some research so I can make sure I show up to this podcast not empty-handed in terms of preparation, even though for the most part these episodes are freestyle. Having a little preparation, especially when discussing something that can be not technical but very involved, ayahuasca would be that. I'm going to go ahead right away and say, hey, listener, if you really want to know how ayahuasca precisely works, there are so many better resources out there. In fact, there's this YouTube video from this individual who I know played on Big Brother Canada. He has that science YouTube channel, and there's a nice 3-minute YouTube video, what is ayahuasca, that covers this pretty nicely, nice and easy. It's Your Brain on Ayahuasca, the hallucinogenic drug by ASAP Science. Okay, so shout out to the guy who played Big Brother. You know what? Everything is just me trying to tie my everything back to special interests such as Big Brother. So what is ayahuasca? Just a quick little rip off of Wikipedia here. Ayahuasca is a South American psychoactive decoction. So decoction, I looked up, it's like a brew, something that sits brewing and simmering. So it's a South American psychoactive decoction prepared from, please bear with me, we're going to read it. I'm going to sound this out. It's prepared from Banisteriopsis caapi, so from Banisteriopsis caapi vine, and a DMT containing plant, such as in most cases chacruna. And I believe in the retreat I went to, that's exactly what it was. So that's the baseline of ayahuasca. The cool thing that you'll learn actually from the ASAP Science video, these components alone with the brew, the decoction of Banisteriopsis capi vine alone doesn't do anything. And the chacruna alone doesn't do anything. What's so fascinating is when brewed together, it becomes activated. It is then activated, but it will not work. The DMT components of the ayahuasca brew won't come into effect without that other vine or like that other plant present. I think that's so cool. I'm sure for all the proper nerds out there, like real ass fucking nerds who really want to know, I'm sure you can find a whole wealth of amazing, satisfying information that I'm not going to cover here as it relates to preparing the brew of ayahuasca. But I do think it's so interesting how does one, I mean, this is a great question, right? Like, how does one figure out how ayahuasca comes to be, given that you need to take these two vines together and brew them together? Like, how do you figure that out? You know, and then knowing obviously who works with ayahuasca. This is really key. Who works with ayahuasca? It's usually facilitated by indigenous healers, usually. And in the case when I went to Peru to work with ayahuasca, that was the case too. In Peru, we worked with the Shipibo people. In fact, they refer to this medicine as uni. In Shipibo, that they don't call it ayahuasca, they call it uni. So this is what I was working with, but of course, for the purpose of just staying, you know, understood and mainstream, I'll be referring to this as ayahuasca. Okay, so yeah, I've just jumped right into kind of just the who, what. Who am I? I'm Spencer. Where are you? You're listening to the podcast. What's going on? It's the ayahuasca episode. What's ayahuasca? It's a mix of two things. Crazy. Without the two of them, you don't have ayahuasca. Wild. Who works with ayahuasca? Well, drug tourists, obviously. But otherwise, ayahuasca is practiced in indigenous ceremonies. And I wanted to try it. So in this part 1 for the ayahuasca series, what I'll be focusing on for the most part is just world building, to be honest, and also setting up a context of what my motivation was and what my sources of information getting ready for this experience was, and just sort of building my way up into that. And also, I will probably in the part 1 speak as far as everything it takes for me to get right up into the retreats. In the part 2, what I'll be doing is most likely just kind of parroting off of, I have it in front of me, by the way, I have a journal from the time that I worked with ayahuasca. So in the part 2, I'll probably just be exploring some of those entries, because what I would do is normally, I'm pretty sure I would write in my journal the very next day after a ceremony, just to capture the reflections as soon as possible. And then probably in the part 3, what I'll do is I'll probably honestly save the last ceremony for the part 3, because for context to the listener, just so you know what you're getting yourself into here before we rock and roll. Now, when I went to this retreat, I had access to 5 ceremonies. And so in the next part, when I discuss 4 of them and like sort of the retreat experience, I'll save the last ceremony for the part 3 of ayahuasca, because the last ceremony in itself was such a standalone. It was just such a remarkable standalone, for better and for worse. And I'm sure in the part 3 after that, I can then kind of give my concluding thoughts on the experience of having worked with ayahuasca. Because what's really cool, recording this now, I'll tell you the date of recording. It won't be published on this date. The date of recording, it's February 5th, 2026. What's up, 2026? Let's go, baby. Okay, so I actually had this experience of working with ayahuasca in 2019. And so you can see, or you are maybe understanding, the person you're listening to about this whole ayahuasca experience is someone who is years into digesting the experience. And this is something that felt really important for me to do after I had the experience. Now, of course, this episode is dedicated to the beginning, so I'm not going to focus too much on the after, but just to touch on that, just so you understand where my intentions are, just so you understand why this conversation is happening for me right now, it's because after these ayahuasca ceremonies in 2019, when I was at the age of 24, I was just a 24-year-old girl. when I was in Peru doing this and I was coming out of it, I remember thinking the internet is a crazy place. And it was at the time, as it related to conversations around ayahuasca and other sensational drug-induced psychedelic experiences that you could pursue. I don't know who's listening to this exactly, but if you paid attention at all to podcast bro culture, I mean, were podcast bros really a thing pre-2020? It's such a convo now. But if you paid attention at all to the Joe Rogans, the Aubrey Marcuses, the Tim Ferrisses, et cetera, these people had very sensational, even viral conversations about ayahuasca on their platforms. Usually, if I remember correctly, some of the conversations would take place in the sense of it would feel like some dude recounting his experience drinking this exotic and obscure medicine, this brew, and then he becomes a jaguar or like a snake and he's convening with Mama Ayahuasca or whatever. It's very sensational. Where I felt like, oh, I'm waiting to have this conversation is because after working with ayahuasca, my thought was the world is irresponsible in how it discusses and sensationalizes these experiences. Because here's the thing. You know how many dumb people listen to Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus? I think less dumb people listen to Tim Ferriss. I'm so biased because I was previously. Like, I don't really care right now. But in 2017, 2018, I listened to a lot of Tim Ferriss, and I'm going to get into that because he was my source for ayahuasca. In fact, just out of respect for consistency and anyone who's like really, really curious, I'll do my part and include in the show notes. I'll include in the information for this episode which episodes of the Tim Ferriss podcast could you go listen to hear what I was listening to way back when on ayahuasca, just to see sort of the exposure I would get. I liked Tim's approach to discussing this experience or these experiences because he would explain how it's no BS, it's no bullshit, you really can't fuck around, you're fucking around. He says taking ayahuasca is something like going under the knife for brain surgery. And to have someone like Tim Ferriss say it like that, I was feeling that. I was really taken aback by that. When he was explaining this on his podcast and I was not even decided that I was going to go work with ayahuasca yet, I remember thinking like, whoa, that sounds so intense, right? But then I shifted over to the other conversations being had at the Joe Rogan of it all. And I would feel like, hey, these guys are just sitting around jerking each other off about these sensational experience. And I get it. There's a time and a place to have fun discussing the extremes of an experience, such as working with ayahuasca or quote unquote doing ayahuasca. Sure, it's kind of interesting to say that you were a jaguar, like outrunning venomous snakes in your ayahuasca fantasies, and then Mama Ayahuasca saved you. Like, it's interesting, I guess. But I always felt like it was kind of purposeless and it was sensational, and it most absolutely, if not like factually confirmed, so I'm so sure of it, inspired a lot of listeners from the JRE world to go do these things. And maybe that's a great thing. Maybe it changed lives for the absolute better and it was super healing and it was amazing. But also part of me wonders, like, was it though? Because after having worked with the medicine, I understood it is intense, and it is an experience to be very careful about and to show a lot of respect for. And it's very, in my experience, humbling. And I guess now we can go back to the beginning so that now you understand why I waited. I told myself I'd wait at least 5 years. Here, I've waited now over 5 years, which is great. I've waited enough time to really let this digest. And you want to know the craziest part? Spoiler! My favorite takeaway from everything ever on all of this, my ayahuasca experience, is I still haven't completely integrated. That's a thing, right? After you work with psychedelics, there's an integration process. And I haven't entirely integrated, but maybe in a way Not in a way to say that, oh, I'm a fractured being. Oh, ever since my ayahuasca ceremonies, I'm broken. No. Actually, if anything, in a way, it lended itself to a wholeness of understanding, well, I'm me, and like, it is what it is. And ayahuasca didn't give me anything. If anything, ayahuasca gave me more questions. And I think that's where, I think the questions are where I just don't know, and where I don't have entire integration, and I don't feel a lack. I don't feel lack at all. I feel a fullness in me not feeling resolved. I feel where there's an absence, I look at the absence as a space that is filled up. Like, I occupy the confusion. I occupy the ambiguity. It is not emptiness. It is not lack, but it's just to illustrate to you, my listener, I didn't leave these experiences feeling like, oh, I get it. Oh yeah, Mama Ayahuasca, yeah, she really showed me what's up. Oh, I get it. No, I left these experiences exactly as I am. Exactly as I am, just far more confused and critical of everyone around me in the yap spaces of telling people to do this, try this, do this. Like, you know what? How about you shut the fuck up? Now, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. I will take sips of things throughout recording this because, we're hanging out. I should have probably chosen the water that's also next to my coffee, but you see where my heart's at. So I've had the digestion period and I'm ready to talk about ayahuasca. You know that it's some kind of brew. Let's now discuss how it works according to... No. Okay, because I do have structural notes in front of me, but look, I'm editing on the spot. So I'm like, no, I don't like this flow. So let's stay on the Spencer of it all, and then we'll get into the ayahuasca. When I was 24 years old in 2019 is the year I go from 23 to 24, I was working with the world's largest pickup artist company, which is something I've covered in, the episodes previous to this one. And I was probably unwell. In fact, I have this cool little excerpt from the journal in front of me. This is my ayahuasca journal. This is an excerpt I wrote when I was in Iquitos, Peru, but I was not yet in the retreat. I was still pre-game. It was still my pre-game. And so just so we're aware, the date on this entry here in my ayahuasca journal is September 24th, 2019. And here I talk about how I just, I got to Peru, I got to Iquitos, I did over 24 hours of travel, probably because I was a budget baby, and I probably had like the worst series of flights. And so here I say, when I got back to my hostel, I was covered in sweat. I changed my shirt and laid down in my bed. So it was the kind of hostel that, it's like bunk beds with all these other people. I changed my shirt and laid down in my bed. It was only 3 p.m., 3 in the afternoon, and I stayed sleeping ever since. It's now 10 a.m. So I slept from 3 in the afternoon to 10 a.m. the next day. I love that for me. I actually remember this sleep. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of thunder, and there was lightning shining through the space. It was so cool. This was some of my highlights of being in Peru for this experience, were everything outside of the retreat, honestly, which I think is also very me DNA coded, because in my mind, I know the way my value system works in a very self-centering type of way is I don't want to assign too much value to like, oh, the retreat that costs $3,000. Like, I want to assign a lot of the value. My instinct is to assign a lot of value to, oh yes, the time when I woke up in the middle of the night in my like $20 a night hostel and the sound of lightning, and I was like in a lull of deep sleep, like that's worth the thousands of dollars. I don't know, like it's just, that was the trip, these little things. So yeah, it was only 3 p.m. and I stayed sleeping ever since. It's 10 a.m. I was so tired. Who knows why? Is it just the heat and novelty? Was I just doing the smart thing and copying the street dogs, laying nearly lifeless? Or a more esoteric thought, was I catching up with my first night of defenseless sleep in 2 years? A night of sleep where I have no work things on my mind. since I got to my hostel at 9 a.m. yesterday, I was sleeping for 21 hours. The most action I got was the 3 hours I was out. I'm sorry, I was just trying to interpret what I wrote. Okay, so basically the long story short there is, when I was in my young 20s, I was really struggling with being a workaholic. This is something that I've covered now if you've listened to the episodes leading up to this, but especially in episode number 3, I really share the overview, the big step back overview of living out my 20s, and something that I really, really, really struggled with, especially when I got recruited to work with the world's largest pickup artist company, Real Social Dynamics, and then my next job thereafter, the one that I had right before I got hit, or the time I got hit by a car, I was in workaholism when I was working as a digital marketer. There are a lot of reasons for this. I think workaholics are addicted to the stress of it all, being busy work, having probably, I would derive definitely a sense of value and self-esteem. I would derive a sense of value and self-esteem, a sense of purpose, a sense of believing in myself and my worth based on my performance at work. This is very much how I was doing things. This is very much the mindsets I was subscribing to and not even really knowing it. I'm pretty sure this self-awareness that I'm speaking from is the self-awareness of hindsight, because I don't think I knew it back then, and also because I wasn't willing to know it, because I loved it. I loved the game of the stress. I loved feeling important. I loved feeling needed. I loved getting things done. I loved the dopamine of being a part of this unusual company, because at the time, remember, it's PUA, so it's pickup artistry. I loved it. I was so identified to the whole thing. I loved that I was adjacent to living my dream, because if you've listened to the pickup artist series posted right before this episode, you would know that it was my dream to work with those dum-dums. It was. I know. It's so silly. It was my dream. And so I really was kind of on this frequency that I was not about to be without. But to set that stage, because if you had listened to these episodes, then you would know some of my comfort and identity. I basically had my world rocked a little bit, and I had some reality checks about my pacing and my belonging as it relates to my performance in my job and who I am and what my own dreams too. A part of that company, the pickup artist, what would happen is I would start buying out my mind, my attention. I hit a point of such extreme disillusionment into real life where I saw through everything. I saw through the company. I saw through the leadership. I saw through the decisions. I saw it all. And no longer was I a girl in her teens looking up to these sensational influencers doing these weird things that I thought were kind of interesting, and then doing public speaking and building this interesting pickup company. I was no longer seeing it from the point of view that I maybe had when I was 17, 18. I was now seeing it from the point of view of lived experience, being behind the scenes, actually being there, having my psychic focus attuned to that work 24/7. And I was becoming disillusioned. Things were happening it was just disillusionment on disillusionment on disillusionment. And if you did listen to the previous episodes, then you would know I mentioned that I had a mentor, and he was actually someone who he taught me everything. So he gets such a shout out because he taught me absolutely everything. The name I'm giving him is Vlad, because it's not his name. The name I'm giving him is Vlad, and that's the name I gave him in the previous episodes about the pickup artist. And he taught me everything, and he was my go-to guy. And if you did listen to the PUA episodes, then you would know there was a time that when I first got recruited for the pickup artist, what was happening was I wanted to be RSD Spenny or RSD Spencer. I wanted to be a talking head. I wanted to be a public speaker. I wanted to represent the social dynamics of it all from my point of view. I saw myself doing that. I could see myself doing that. It made sense to me. But then more and more as I got into the work, after I was recruited, I started to find my focus be more adjusted to valuing the experience of marketing. I really liked learning from Vlad. I really liked Vlad's pace of everything. I liked Vlad's ability to subscribe to hustle culture. I really appreciated how intelligent Vlad is. I really appreciated how Vlad would kind of hold my hand through the experience of me learning something that was so unfamiliar to me. Mind you, listener, prior to working with the PUAs, the only thing qualifying me to work with them was that I somehow gave them the impression that I could because I made a YouTube video about them. That did pretty well. That's it. My work experience, I was a cashier. My work experience, I was a garbage babe. We're going to talk about that, by the way. This is the episode where the chapter of working in garbage is going to get all of its flowers. One of the best experiences of my entire life. One of the absolute, not 20s, my entire life. Like, if when I hit my deathbed, if my last thought of my existence is me working in garbage, I will be okay with that. I feel a little emotional thinking about that. Like, if my last living memory ever is the experience of me stinking of garbage, being surrounded by garbage, and in that work, that job, like if that's the last memory I get to live before I take my last breath, what a beautiful life I got to live. What a beautiful life. So there wasn't much experience really qualifying me to be the marketer, but Vlad, my mentor, was so good at this. Also, I was his EA, his executive assistant, which adds to the workflow of importance. I'm the EA to the CMO. I'm the executive assistant to the chief marketing officer of my absolute favorite company ever. This is a dream come true. And my thought was, I'm going to use this job. I'm going to use this opportunity to offer value, do my best, build this marketing experience, but then snake my way into being an instructor is what I thought. But none of that happened, of course. And what would happen in 2019 actually is that PUA company, a lot of structural things were changing. A lot was changing. And Vlad, my mentor, he actually got let go in April. He got let go in April. And this was an interesting time because once 2019 hit, honestly, I was over it. As you know, there was another young woman around my age who got recruited to work with this pickup artist company, and she started to be pushed on this pipeline of becoming the first public-facing woman representing the brand. And again, you have to listen to the pickup artist installments to understand this. It would be the episode right before this one. I was under... I basically didn't ever push myself forward in the plot of actually making my ideals happen. And I got really distracted by the marketing of it all, which is why this other girl would take this spot. Because that, I guess energetically, that role of being like the first female RC instructor there, public facing, was always available, but I was never thinking or dreaming myself into like manifesting these things. I think probably also a lot of who I was at that time, a lot of life kind of like would happen for me. Yes, I would do shit in my life. Yes, I did things to move my plots forward, but a lot of things would happen for me. And I think that was probably the headspace I was in. You know, if it's going to happen, it's meant to happen. If it's meant to happen, it's already happening, is what I thought. But I think what was meant to happen happened, to be honest, and that is that I leave the company disillusioned. And I left, especially in 2019, when I was already resigned to this idea of like, yeah, I'm definitely not the first instructor. That's done. Like, this other person has it. Okay, it is what it is. I like my job, I guess, so that's good. And I just took my role in marketing more seriously. I stepped more into that role. I thought, okay, well, then this is me then. I'm that bitch. I'm that fucking bitch. I'm the marketing bitch. But then Vlad gets let go in April, and then that was rough because in my mind at the time, I thought, I'm disillusioned from all of you. All of you, my cult gurus, Tyler, all of you, I'm disillusioned, baby. And you know how much I was paid for that job? First of all, I was a contractor. It was hourly. I did 3 months unpaid. And then when I got on payroll, it was... you know what? I think it was $15 USD. Okay, I'm a Canadian, so that was nice. $15 USD an hour, and maybe later it bumped up to 20. No, maybe not even. I honestly don't remember, but it never went higher than that. You know, the best thing I had going for me was the fact that when it would hit my account, it would be after the conversion. So I'd have like a little pump more money there. But you know, with contractors, you have to do your own taxes and stuff. So it really like wasn't that great. The coolest thing about that salary though is that we used a software called Time Doctor. And so when I press play on Time Doctor, it means I'm working, and I get to basically run my own hours, track my own hours, with softwares like Time Doctor, they could hack into your computer or whatever and see what you're doing. Okay, that's fine. The downside with something like Time Doctor versus a monthly salary is I remember sometimes I'd be like, well, I really want to make money. I really want to make some fucking money, bitch. So I would find myself really taking my time to get shit done, which is super annoying. I liked how my next marketing gig that I had, I was paid way more, and it was paid based on a monthly salary, which was far, far better because, you know, like when you're really doing this work, marketing, it's not like a consistent output every day. When I've had my hourly job working at the cannabis place or even the garbage place or any other place, you're there from time to time. It is what it is. That's how it works. But in digital marketing, the hourly model isn't a win-win, because how am I supposed to make my money other than to go slow? The hourly model rewards slowness, whereas the salary model rewards me doing whatever the fuck I want on my time, and so I could be fast about it. And then I remember when I was eventually having an hourly model type of salary, you know, some weeks fucking busy, some weeks I'm doing fuck all. It's like I have mini vacations throughout the week just because there's no work to do and I've already been paid, so it is what it is. And then sometimes I feel bad. I'd be like, damn, I'm not even working. I get paid money and I don't even work. But then next thing you know, I'd have a super duper busy stretch and I'd be working, like overworking, and it's almost like I'm overcompensating. So somehow, yeah, the monthly container salary of it all kind of balances it out. But anyways, the whole point I went on this goddamn tangent was just because, one, I'm TMI, two, my caffeine's hitting in, and three, now you understand, like, the job of it all. I was just enjoying the opportunity to, you know, remote work will always be good. Like, that's some pretty good money for remote work, especially back in 2019. Like, that was actually good money back in 2019 for remote work, having been entry level, whatever. It was okay. But when Vlad was let go is when I was so out, because I perceived my alliance to be to him, because he was my guy. I spoke to him every day. I was in his head. Like, he was in my head is way more appropriate. He was in my head. Vlad was like the dude I responded to. And when he told me that he was let go, he made sure he told me one-on-one. And I remember feeling heartbroken. You know what's funny? I was actually in Toronto. Shout out, by the way. I'm not recording this episode in my girlfriend's SUV. I am in Toronto as we speak. I'm house sitting for my family. In 2019 in April, I was in Toronto just visiting, and the instructor, Sarah, so she's the first female instructor for RSD. She was having a free tour in Toronto, and I went to go and be there because I thought it's cool to, first of all, have a chance, like an excuse to be in Toronto, and second of all, it's cool to attend any RSD event, especially when you're a part of the team, because it's not like I'm in attendance of her event. It's like I get to participate in the facilitation of her event, which is something I really enjoy. But it was in that event that I got that news from Vlad that he was let go. And I felt like this sinking feeling. And I remember just leaving the event, Sarah's event in Toronto, just leaving, no word, no nothing. Because in that moment I knew, like, oh, everything's about to change. Everything is about to change. Now, here's what I want to be really clear about. I'm pretty sure I was going to be leaving Real Social Dynamics regardless. And here's why. In 2019, I already had the Peru trip on my calendar. But I think what I was hoping I could do was go to Peru and then come back and have the job. But then in the April, and again, I went to Peru in September. In the April, when Vlad told me he was let go, he made a point to say this. Not only was he let go, he said, and they're coming for you and everyone else too. And I'm like, oh. So he used a little bit of fear mongering. Okay. So I'm like, oh, so I not only are you gone, the one person who I like working with, but you're telling me I'm on the block. That's Big Brother speak. You're telling me I'm on the chopping block now, that they're coming for me. I'll be honest, I wasn't too worried about it in the grand scheme of things for a few reasons. To remove the CMO, the active CMO with the last few years, is a huge switchover in these big companies, you know, like these multi-million-dollar companies. It's a big swap. To do so suddenly, like perhaps the upper executives had the plot line to remove Vlad for a while. Perhaps they did, but from my point of view, it happened very suddenly. And then to replace his position with like a new CMO, and then the new CMO's job is maybe to thin out the team and get rid of any, excess fat on the team, maybe. But even if that is the case, to be able to accomplish thinning out the team so quick is not going to happen so easily, because you need the team. You need to lean on the team to assist in the transition itself. So yeah, maybe my job was at risk, honestly, but I knew that it couldn't happen so quick. And especially I wasn't threatening with the money I was being paid. Thank God that money tangent has a purpose, because I'll be honest, when I was on that tangent about salaries, I'm like, in my head, I'm editing in my head, and I'm like, Spencer, what are you on about? Can you get back on this is an episode about ayahuasca. But now, like in my mind, when you have that kind of lower tier salary, I'm not going to be the top of the list, most threatening person. And I remember every shift, well, they're not quite shifts, but like every day thereafter that I was working, and I was working with the new CMO, and I was moving projects forward, and so much of the back end management stuff was changing. There was a new CEO. They were putting Nick. Again, all of these characters will make sense if you had listened to the previous series on pickup artists. You don't have to. It's okay. They were putting Nick, like the co-founder of this entire company, in a background role because they thought he was like problematic. And so they got in this new CEO. But honestly, this new CEO only made things worse. Like, it was just so messy. And like my guy, Vlad, was gone. It was so messy. And I knew my loyalty wanted to quit as soon as I heard Vlad was fired. Financially, I couldn't, and I expressed that to him. I told Vlad, I gave him the power, you know what I mean? I was like, Vlad, I'm out. However, I can't be out so fucking soon, because I actually had just had I just got an apartment, like I had rent to pay, and I knew actually that I didn't want to keep that apartment. I ended up reassigning the lease. As much as I loved it, there were things wrong with it that I couldn't accept. And so I ended up reassigning the lease. So basically my parameters to Vlad were like, look, I'm following you all the way, but I can't even leave until I've basically removed myself from the things that I'm committed to that cost me money, because I need to play relatively safe here, obviously, right? And what I ended up doing, which is pretty fucking dumb in retrospect, but, I got to live my life to live my life, to know my life. I ended up doing both, working for Real Social Dynamics in my role, as always, in marketing, and also for free, doing free labor for Vlad in his own agency. So he was like having an agency outside of this company. He had like a few clients, whatever. Like it was like a little starter marketing agency. And that's what he invested all of his time and energy into after being let go. And I remember him, now remind you, like I was 24 in this conversation. I'm pretty sure Vlad, as my mentor at the time, he was in his early 30s. I remember Vlad saying that he really regrets and really wished all these years where he was putting all of his time and energy into RSD, he could have been building his own thing. And that always stuck with me, because I always thought, I should have been building my own fucking thing too. I still kind of feel that way too. Like I am Vlad's age now at that time. Like I am 30, I am 31, and I am thinking, I finally launched Social Dynamics Nerd. I was just on the phone with one of my close friends from the weed job, one of my best friends. She was asking me what I'm up to, and I'm like, I just launched this thing finally. Like, I just launched my website. Like, it's ready to go. It's live, socialdynamicsnerd.com. It's all GGG. And then I said, but what's crazy is I could have launched this 10 years ago. Like, it's all there. I could have launched this 10 years ago. It's just I'm doing it now. So Vlad's piece about how I should have been focusing on myself always stuck with me. But anyways, I was there at a time, still working my job with the pickup artist, being fully disillusioned, just getting my money, getting out. And then I was also simping on supporting Vlad and his projects, because my indoctrination of it all, me being illusioned, transferred over to Vlad. It's as if I became, over the years working with them, I became disillusioned by all the PUA gurus, but I transferred that, and instead of being free, it just transferred itself over to someone else, something else, and it became Vlad. And that was crazy, because there I was in a position where I was serving two different entities, one of which I'm not even being paid for. I was doing it out of the goodness of my heart, because I felt bad that like Vlad, my guy, my leader, my mentor, was let go so suddenly. And within 2 months or so of just like keeping up the whole charade, I ended up being, within 2 months, I ended up being, free of my apartment, reassigned the lease, figured it all out. Sure, I'm not balling out in money or whatever, but it's exactly what I set out for myself in terms of integrity and loyalty, which is great. Now I can quit. And I did. I gave my 2 weeks notice via email to Real Social Dynamics. And, I touched upon how in the previous, when I was actually discussing the lore of the pickup artist, I touched upon how I'm happy when I left. I left after about 2+ years of working or so. It was definitely in the range of, if I started late 2017 and I left summer 2019. So it's a nice little healthy stretch at a job, nothing too much. It felt like a sweet spot. Even though I didn't leave on the best of terms in terms of like how I was feeling internally, I left on good terms, and I am grateful for that, because I left like you leave any job. I never thought I'd leave my dream job like any job. Like, here's my 2 weeks notice. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I never saw it happening like that for me, but it did, which is cool. And, actually, this is almost like an unofficial part 5 to the pickup artist thing. When I guess news went around about me leaving, Owen, the co-founder of Real Social Dynamics, the real brainchild behind RSD, he gave me a call. Probably the last time we spoke on the phone. Not that we didn't speak that often, but like he gave me a call and he asked what's up, and he was concerned, which was nice. I remember thinking, oh, this is sweet. Of course he was covering his bases. He really was, because he was asking like, did anything happen? Like, what happened? Or like, did anyone do anything? And I thought, it's so interesting that he's calling me, asking me these questions, because what does that say about his company? You know what I mean? Like, I appreciate the concern. I appreciate that he even gave me a call. He didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? But it is kind of interesting that he was sort of being careful. He was worried that I was leaving in response to something. I never did tell him like, oh yeah, well, I mean, you guys let go of Vlad and now I'm this or that. I'm not that type of person. I usually keep my cards closer to my chest. I just play it cordial. And I'm like, oh no, everything's okay. Whatever. It's all good. Thank you for everything. Thanks for everything. It's all good. It's been a great time. See you around in the world. That kind of thing. Even though, and I probably have a lot of shit I could tell you. It's just, basically, you don't have to worry is what it was at the time. And then when I left RSD, it was midsummer. It was like June, July. And I just worked from June, July, unpaid, all the way through September until I left for Peru to go work with AYAHUASCA. Here's what was interesting. In that summer leading up to going to work with AYAHUASCA, I was working with Vlad, and I was working with some of his clients, which I won't name names, but some of his clients at the time were some of the bigger, more significant, very, very big spiritual YouTubers who, if I said some names, I think a lot of listeners would be like, oh yeah, like I know who that is. And they, in fact, also are big fans of ayahuasca. And they were adding to the conspiracy that I continue to live in with like how irresponsible people are discussing these things. Because there I was working for Vlad and his clients. Vlad made sure to assign me the client accounts that were the spiritual YouTubers because he thought that was more up my alley. But, people always underestimate me and how my mind works. Like, let us not forget that I willingly worked with the pickup artist, and now you're giving me the spiritual YouTubers? Like, if you really think about it, I've worked with the problem. I worked with the patriarchy. Like, I worked with the enemy. I don't know how else to put it. And now you're going to put me with the woo-woo frou-frou? Like, don't misunderstand me. And I always thought it was a little pacifying. Now I'm grateful to have had the chance, because now I get to say, oh, I worked with these big YouTubers. I did, whatever. But I always found it to be a little indicative of how Vlad was not totally seeing me for who I know myself to be, because he would kind of talk to me in these pacifying ways. And now, of course, we're getting into the Vlad of it all. And this is important to the ayahuasca story, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be on this tangent. So thank you for enjoying the Shout podcast with me, where I speak super duper off the cuff. So Vlad would speak to me in these sort of pacifying ways where he'd be like, oh yeah, you're like the hippies, you get the hippies. And, or he'd be, or I don't know, he would just, or when he would validate me, he would do so by saying like, oh yeah, you're a beast, you know, these things that it didn't feel rooted in truth. And the thing about me is I am words of affirmation. That is my love language. So I do like feedback. I do like being seen. But if feedback's not placed well, then I know you don't see me. You know what I mean? Like whatever the fuck you're saying is not even me. It's you, I guess. Like it's your lens and it's nice. I appreciate the effort, but it's not landing for me. And that's the thing is after I left RSD and I went to go work unpaid for Vlad, charity work always framed with like, oh no, it's coming. You know, I just building up the agency, you know, building. You're a part of the building. It's going to be great. It's going to be big, as they say, you know, it's gonna. It's all happening, as they say. I was then becoming disillusioned by Vlad. I was. And in fact, you know, I won't even go into this, but Vlad and I started to actually have contentious encounters. It actually got intense, which is interesting because for the longest time, over 2 years working with him, I was always very passive and submissive. I submit to him, you know. But then I started to actually just be more of who I know myself to be, because at that point, we have to look at the character arc through my mind, how I'm perceiving myself in my experience. If we go back to the beginning of when I worked with Vlad, I was a fish out of water. So every aspect of hand-holding was fully not just warranted, it was like appreciated. It was great. But then if you go 2+ years into the work experience, I'm at a point where, no, you've actually taught me so many things. Now I can do things on my own. I can think for my own. I can make decisions myself. Like I could run the show, or I could run aspects of the show alone, which means now I have a degree of confidence, which means that now when my leader is going to speak to me in a way that I don't find suitable, I'm replying differently too. And I remember where I felt my first real disillusionment with Vlad. This is what the situation was. It was a product launch for a really big spiritual YouTuber who also pitches ayahuasca. And I think it's controversial, but whatever. And on this product launch, everything was pretty much smooth except one detail. We built the page, the sales page, on ClickFunnels. We had a timer on the page for the pre-launch to get VIP interest. And when it was launch time, there was like a tech cache issue, I imagine. I think cache and cookies, where I couldn't get the fucking timer off of the page. So now the page was live. The launch was live, but the timer was at 000 stuck on the page. It's not the end of the world, but it's not aesthetically not what we want. Like it just, no. And so the big spiritual YouTuber was like, hey, can we get rid of that timer? And so Vlad hit me up and was like, hey, can you get rid of that timer? And I'm like, yeah, hey, I can't get rid of the timer. It just wouldn't go. Like, I don't know. It just wouldn't. I tried everything. I don't know what the fuck was happening. It just wouldn't go. It was stuck. It was like a ClickFunnels drag and drop builder glitch. Okay. Here's the thing. The big spiritual YouTuber was not happy about that. And I didn't hear about that. I not directly from him. I heard about it from Vlad. The day that this launch was happening, it was Vlad's birthday, like 32, 33, 34. I don't know. One of those birthdays. It was his birthday. And I remember my disillusionment happened because Vlad was pissed. And me, the workaholic who's addicted to adrenaline, is like feeling that, you know, because him being pissed, like I'm feeling the spike of cortisol too. And it was his birthday, and he says, now I have to work on my birthday. That's what he said to me. Okay, this was awesome because it was the best. It was like, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. That's exactly what I needed. Right time, right place. There really is some sort of divine intervention at play, isn't there? Isn't there? I needed that. Because I was feeling bad. I felt bad. I felt bad about this mistake. I felt bad I couldn't correct this mistake. It felt bad. It felt really bad until Vlad told me in the most sad, self-centered, self-pitying way possible as a grown-ass adult man in his fucking 30s, now I have to work on my birthday. Oh, okay. Now, to my listener, not to say I'm heartless. Like, okay, I'm sorry if maybe him needing to respond to his clients when he's building his little startup agency there. I'm sorry if that put him in an unpleasant spot on his little special day there. But my point of view is one of being a person. And maybe this is a good pivot to go to actually turn back the clock to me working with garbage. Because Vlad, oh, you have to work on your birthday? Oh, you have to work on your birthday? Vlad, do you know how many adults, how many people on this planet are working on their birthday or picking up shit on their birthday or doing every fucking miserable piece of shit, low life, dehumanizing, nothing special, nothing too much experience on their birthday? I don't know. My assessment would probably be like a lot of them, like a lot of people, like a lot. I would love to have numbers. This may be one of these questions I would ask God if God is real, and like if I die and I come face to face with God and God's like, hey Spencer, you can ask me any kind of question. What kind of question do you want to ask? I'd ask, well, God, I would actually like to have some numbers. Can you pull up a report? I want graphs. I want demographics. I want to know in the life that I lived on that, occupying that planet, that body as Spencer, I want to know, God, how many adults, how many mere mortals were living out, not, you know what, bring children into it too. Let's talk about all the fucked up lives of all these fucked up abandoned children that are getting abused, that are getting, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, okay, not to be dark, but in my assessment of reality is, Vlad, I'm sorry, you're a grown man. I can't, that doesn't work on me. I didn't tell him this. I just want you, my listener, to know this was a point in me, internal alchemizing shift of, really, you're sad because now you have to work on your birthday. Like, these are your clients. They paid you. You should work on your birthday. I've worked on my birthday. I've worked many times on my birthday. I don't say much about it. I don't do that anymore, but I've done plenty of working on my birthday. And a lot of people work on their fucking birthday. I worked my cashier job on my birthday. I worked on my birthday. People do this shit. And then, so now we know that right before ayahuasca, I was finally getting the full spectrum disillusionment experience from all of it. And yes, the trip is booked. Yes, I know I'm going to work with ayahuasca. I've even talked about it with the big spiritual YouTubers. And you know what? The big spiritual YouTubers also gave me disillusionment. They also gave me the fucking ick because I'd be on these Zoom calls with them. And Vlad would bring it. He would volunteer the information probably to build rapport. I was not volunteering this information because I was really serious about my experience. Like, I saw it as my experience because I was the one listening to years past the Tim Ferriss podcast where I'd hear Tim explain how like ayahuasca is like climbing Mount Everest. Like ayahuasca is like having brain surgery. And so I knew not to be willy-nilly about my disclosures with it. I knew to keep it closer to my heart, closer to my chest. Like I knew I was doing it for me. But, you know, Vlad volunteered the information to the big spiritual YouTubers who glorify ayahuasca also and exploit, in my opinion, exploit it also. And they're like, oh yeah, mama, grandmother Aya, she's quite a spirit to work with. And already in my head, I'm thinking, okay, like these people are giving me the ick. These people are, I don't know why, they're just all giving me the ick. And thankfully, when I go into my ayahuasca experience, that the language will make more sense. The retreat that I went to, they had this really interesting way of removing all of these projections that people do, like the Western world does upon Aya, where they're like, listen, we don't actually see, like at my retreat, they're like, we don't actually see ayahuasca as like a feminine, well, it's not that they didn't say that, but it's like, we don't see ayahuasca as like a mother entity or like a grandmother entity. Like, she's not a she. It's not that. Like, she's not she. He's not he. It's not that. And I'm so grateful to my retreat for being like that. Because I'm like, thank God. You're normal. I don't know what to say. Like, and again, I don't want to reduce anyone else's. Listen, yeah, let me be really clear. I don't want to take away from anyone else's experience. If you've had an experience with a medicine such as ayahuasca, and for you worked with Mama Ayahuasca, you worked with Grandmother Ayahuasca, you felt like you were with her and she was with you, and that meant a lot to you, okay, that's great. That's a really beautiful filter and frame of reality. I'm really happy for you that you had that experience. I just want to say that for me, in the way that I personally like, the way I personally prefer to find the distillation of like clarity in my experiences is I find it a lot clearer to be without these projections of archetypes of like, oh, the spirit of Mama Ayahuasca. I felt like it was way better when the retreat I was a part of were very much, it just felt slightly more clinical. Even though it was woo-woo as fuck, it felt slightly more like, we don't do that here. We don't other the spirit as some sort of like woman, mother figure, grandmother figure. We don't do that here. And I thought, thank God. Thank God. So, these spiritual YouTubers are like, telling me stuff like, oh, wow, it's going to be great. You're going to work with grandmother ayahuasca. And I just remember sitting there thinking like, oh my God, that is so cringy. I didn't say it, but again, it's like the degrees and degrees and degrees of disillusionment at the age of 24. It was just hitting me all across the board, which is awesome. It's really awesome. That was also the age when I took that first sip of alcohol too. Like so many extreme things were actually changing at 24 years old when I think about it in retrospect. And so now, how was it that with ayahuasca, I came to be so passionate to want to work with it? And then don't worry, after this, we get into the actual ayahuasca of it all. I promise you'll never have to talk. You'll never have to hear me say Vlad again. I mean, hope I won't commit myself. You know what I mean? Like, all of this is for a purpose. All of this yapping is for a purpose. Setting a stage, setting a character, introducing that whole world of, when I was finally in Iquitos, when I was finally in Peru, I slept for all of that time, finally relaxed. Why? Because it was the first time in years that I was not just unemployed, because I you know what I mean? Like when I went to Peru, I had nothing. I had no obligations to anything. Not just unemployed, but also like away from all of that. That wasn't just any kind of employment. That's not just any job. That's a job that had like a cult-like pull on my psyche. That's really intense. And then Vlad had a pull on my psyche too. It was really intense. So it's nice to read in my journal that there I was sleeping from 3 p.m. to 10 a.m. the next day. and to describe it as my first defenseless sleep in 2 years it's like, that's why it's cool to have kept a journal during that experience, because I could not remember that for myself. There's no way I was going to remember it for myself like that. I wasn't going to remember it in those words. Like, I don't remember. Why ayahuasca for Spencer? Why Spencer? Why ayahuasca? Okay, so basically, when I was 21 years old, I went to go live remotely in my family's cottage. Basically, my aunt has a cottage in Ontario, and I had this brain blast after having a lot of darkness at the age of 20. I hit a very depressive window in my mind. In fact, for some lore, I was actually living in Whistler, British Columbia. I was living in Whistler with my girlfriend, Camelia. We were new in our relationship, and it was not good because before Whistler, we had just started dating for like 6 months. We were madly in love, like in every way that 20-year-olds madly in love, deeply, madly, crazily in love in every single way. And it was so good, so good. But I had a lot of unresolved issues in my head as it related to my attachment styles and whatnot. And eventually when Camelia and I moved to Whistler together, which, just to be clear, originally in terms of life plans, that was her plan always, not mine. That was her plan always. And I'm just saying that to be clear, like, oh, why did that happen? Like, I really was following her. It was a choice. She invited me along, to be clear. I did not invite myself, but because we'd already been dating now and like in love, and she knew she was leaving, there was sort of this grief around the corner because she knew that she was leaving. So what does that mean for us? Like, do we break up? Are we long distance? But I guess Camelia had this thought of like, well, Spencer, you're dropping out of school. Like, do you want to just come? And of course, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I do. I love you. I do. I really do. And so we moved to Whistler. We end up getting jobs in housekeeping. And we end up living in staff housing provided by the hotel that we were doing housekeeping for. So that was actually really cool because we lived in the Whistler Village. And we were working for a hotel where we basically would work and sleep in the exact same place. That does not mean that we got to sleep in hotel rooms. The hotel had staff housing units, these little apartments in their basement, basically. And when I was living in Whistler with my girlfriend, I became really depressed. I think I felt a little detached. I think I felt a little misguided. And worst of all is actually her and I had some crucial relationship conversations that made me absolutely flip out into fucking insanity. Like fully unbridled anger, bad, dark, dense energy, bad girl. And that sucked because after I had this like flip out, because I realized that I don't know what the fuck was wrong with me. Like I was really jealous. I don't know. It was so toxic. It was so bad. After all that, obviously we find like the silver lining. We get past it, obviously, but sort of like the seeds of that darkness was still in me, and I'd feel it flare up. And honestly, when I was in Whistler, I was so depressed. I was so depressed. The supervisors for housekeeping were bullies, literally, like actually bullies, truly. Oh my gosh. Ugh. I'm saying this with a smile on my face because it's nostalgic. Like such bullies would like specifically bully us transient girls, because basically in housekeeping work in Whistler, there are the 24/7 employees, the staff where they live in Squamish. It's just a town over. But then there are the transient, the staff housing people that come for the season. And so we were that quota for our team, and our supervisor clearly has a routine of like torturing the little white girls. Which honestly, power to her, whatever. But it wasn't good because it would eat at like also the demons that were already in my head. The living situation sucked. I hinted at this a little bit when discussing the Australian dynamic, how I lived with people that, like I lived with a girl that made me feel so insecure. I always felt awful. I was walking on eggshells. Like, oh my God, just the whole Whistler experience was such a dark time. And you know, what's medicinal in Whistler? How can I get out? Well, going up the mountain and snowboarding is good, you know, and employees have discounts on the season pass. But even that was kind of a waste of money, because while all of the other people in staff housing had other jobs, like in the restaurant or working front desk or whatever, the problem with housekeeping as a job is our work hours were always during the ski hours too. So I remember the way it felt. Like I had a season's pass for Whistler, and I'm pretty sure because if you have a season's pass, you could see your stats of how many times you went up the lift. And I think I had, oh my gosh, oh, it's so sad in retrospect. I had like 14 runs. That's a whole season. I had 14 runs. Can you imagine? So sad. Because why? Because on my off days from housekeeping, what would happen is I'd either be so depressed that I couldn't will myself up the mountain, or I'd be so physically tired because the job was so physically demanding. And so the days where I finally would actually go up the mountain, like it was a medicinal pursuit. It was a nice little escape. But you know what I would find? This is how I know I was definitely in a depression. I'd find myself in the most beautiful place of Canada, up the mountain with the most amazing panoramic views of mountaintops, like glaciers. It's gorgeous. The air is fresh. The trees, like it's honestly so, BC is so beautiful. The west coast of Canada is so gorgeous. I would be here living this life. It's a good life. And I would feel in my body, I remember feeling just a complete darkness, or not even like a numbness. And I just remember I felt catatonic. I felt out of it. And nothing was helping me. Nothing worked. And it was awful, because then I also was being this person in my relationship too. And that was like not good. Now, of course, there were probably highlights. I know Camelia and I had good times. Like this was quite an interesting time in our lives, you know, and like we had our Whistler adventures. There were interesting things that happened. There were highs and the lows, but I was definitely the low. And it was just so fucking bad, dude. It was so bad. You want to know how bad it is? On New Year's Eve in Whistler, we got some speed, basically. I don't know how else to call it. The drug dealer called it MDA. So it's sort of like it has properties of MDMA, I guess, but it was also speedy. Like it's very like any obscure drug that goes fast and has some obscure name. In my mind, the easiest way to describe it is to just call it meth. I'm sure it's not, especially MDA is not precisely meth. It's something else, but I think it's like a baseline of meth with a sprinkle of something else. And I remember we had leftover after New Year's, and I was using the leftover speed to like feel something. You know what I mean? Like I was using it to feel something. And I remember sometimes Camelia and I, we would have off days from work at the same time. And we would go do things. Like there's a library in Whistler Village. Like we would go like do things. But you know what I would do? I would bring myself and the meth, the MDA, to the library. And like I'd hang out with Camelia. We'd be looking at books, like really, really wholesome, really sweet, wholesome activities. And then I would go excuse myself to the bathroom and hit bumps off of my hand from the meth bag. And this is how I knew that was problematic. I wouldn't even tell my girlfriend. The thing about me is I tend to tell my girlfriends what I'm up to, especially when I know I'm being bad, because I'm more of I feel like I'm safer and I operate better when I'm operating from complete transparency. So eventually Camelia knew, but like the fact that I wasn't even telling her what the fuck was going on, like I was really in the darkness of being sneaky and using meth in order to feel something. When I was in Whistler, there were some great things that happened to wrap up the trip. So, number one, towards the end of the season, we were basically told, girls, there's no work for you. It was April of 2016. Girls, there's no work for you. It's the end of the season. Sorry, there's like really not much work for you. Now, they're not kicking us out. They're not evicting us. But at the same time, they're basically saying like, look, you're not going to really see yourself on the schedule. Okay. At least like there's no work until like the summer months. But that's it. It's downtime for quite a while before it really picks up again. Camelia and I knew we'd already been here 6 months. Like we'd done the job. It's probably time to move on. But I don't remember exactly what we were going back to other than just starting a life in Montreal together. That's all. The thing is, though, because I'd had this whole months and months of being depressed and also being depressed and taking it out in my mind at my girlfriend, like blaming my depression on my relationship, basically, I realized I need help. I need something like salvation. Like I need something, because I'm ruining my relationship and I know I'm hurting my girlfriend and I feel terrible and it's awful. I hate it. And I kind of felt like I needed a break from my relationship, but I didn't want to break up, you know, like, because even though I'm describing me being dark and depressed and being a bad vibe and definitely a bad girlfriend in some aspects of that time, even though like I still knew I loved Camelia and she loved me. So it was just like a little bit toxic. That's all. Like I was a little bit toxic. I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew I was like, I had this weird, like unresolved anger and upset in my mind. And I didn't really know what to do with it. I really didn't even understand it at all. Now, I had sort of like an epiphany brain blast, which I don't know if this brain blast came before or after having magic mushrooms for the first time. But Camelia, so this is at the end of the season. It's April 2016. We're not working anymore. We might have even booked our flights back to Montreal. Like it's the end of Whistler and it's springtime. We only ever experience Whistler in the wintertime. The spring, so you know, we actually see like grass poking through. Like it's really becoming something else. We're really there for the end of it. The weather's beautiful. It sounds amazing. Like everything's amazing. It's really looking up. And we got a hold of magic mushrooms. And we made tea. Now, Camelia, my girlfriend, had already tripped on mushrooms countless times, or like handfuls of times prior to this. I had not, never did. I had tried it once, but I took a small amount and nothing happened. So up until this moment, I would say, no, I never tried it, never tried mushrooms. Camelia is the best indoctrinator for substances, because she never sensationalized anything. She was always so keen on set and setting. She was always keen on being responsible. She was always keen on having intentions. Like really such a beautiful hand-holding experience. So it was cool that on this mushroom experience in Whistler, we brewed a tea. We put the mushrooms in a tea, some sort of, I don't know, one of these, what is it? It's like the one with the tiger on it. You know what I mean? Like that spicy Bengal, is a Bengal spice tea. You know the one, like someone knows what I'm talking about. They usually have it at yoga studios. You know the one. Then we went up one of the, not the mountain, not the Whistler Mountain. There were kind of like these local hikes that one can do around Whistler, and they're like little slopes and stuff. And we just kind of freestyled, sipped on our tea, and eventually found our way into this clearing on top of a little hill where we could feel alone and like be at the top, like we have access to shade, we have access to sun, like we could be really at the top and just start to trip out. And this was the point when I actually was like, oh shit, the mushrooms, I'm feeling them. Oh no, I'm really feeling mushrooms. Like for the first time it was happening, my first trip. And I don't remember everything exactly, but a few moments I recall. I remember, and now once tripping on mushrooms, Camille and I are like existing together separately type of thing. And that's how her and I would always do mushrooms together. It's how I prefer to take mushrooms with friends. If I do that with friends, it's like, hey, like at the peak of this trip, at the peak of being on mushrooms, we're just going to exist together, but like in our own worlds, right? That's how it goes. And so my effects were coming on, and all I remember doing, honestly, was staring at my hands and crying. I was staring at my hands and crying. And I think that was like the first little bit of feeling some degree of healing in my life, because the thing with my hands and what the intensity of that was at the time is I was just, I brand myself as TMI, but the only reason why I'm filtering myself right now is actually not even for myself. It's not even for myself. So just out of carefulness for others, I'll just say I was looking at my hands and reflecting on how these hands have done things that I didn't like. I didn't like. But there I was on the mushrooms looking at the hands and seeing them in a new way, where I felt myself feeling probably a lot of compassion and love for myself, and like a love for my younger self too. And so I just remember staring at my hands and sobbing, because I was sort of like forgiving them or loving them. Like I was just having a moment with my hands, which was cool, because if you really pay attention to the stories I tell about how I participate in my life, a lot of it is based on my worth in relation to how I perform or what I do. And like I think hands symbolically are tools of performance, is how I see it. Like that's how I personally see my hands. My hands make me fucking do shit. And so it was kind of cool to have this moment in 2016 where here I am tripping on mushrooms for the first time. And the only takeaway I really remember from that time is just feeling this release about myself. And so whether it was before or after this mushroom experience, I had the epiphany, I need to get away. What do I do? And it was brain blast. I know what to do. I need to just go to that cottage, my aunt's cottage, and just be there for a bit. I don't know what I'll do. I don't know how long. The summer was coming up, but like, that's what I need to do. I don't know how I even had the idea, the way that idea took shape in my mind. And this will be a pattern, by the way, in the story. The way the idea took shape in my mind, it felt like it happened to me. Like it wasn't me crossing my T's, dotting my I's, considering all my options, and then coming to an educated conclusion like, yes, I should probably just go to the family's cottage where no one is. I should probably just do that. It wasn't that. It was, Spencer, go. That's what you're going to do. You're going to go do that. And I explained it to Camelia. She was fully understanding. She understood my intentions. I explained to her, like, I'm losing my mind. I'm going crazy. You know it. She knows, because we were living together on a single bed. We had a bunk bed, but we would live on the single bed together. I'm losing my mind and I need to go do this. And she was very understanding of it. And of course, fast forward a couple of months, next thing you know, I'm in Ontario. I'm at the cottage. I am all alone, except for when family comes on weekends or whatever. Camelia too, she would come every like 2 weeks usually. I'm applying to jobs, and I had applied through Indeed for a job for an MRF, a materials recovery facility, MRF. I'm pretty sure that's what it stands for. Basically a recycling sorting factory. And I apply, not thinking much of it. It was actually, the ad was posted by an employment agency. And I remember I got called in for the interview, and Camelia had coached me, because I told her about it. She coached me like, oh yeah, just when you show up to the interview, just say you really love the environment, like you love recycling. Because like, what qualifies me? I've never done something like this before. But she's like, yeah, just make it about the environment. That never had to happen, because when I showed up to the interview, it was so interesting that the woman interviewing me, I remember her name was Carrie, I think. She made it her point. She made it her job not to ask me why or who I am or how I qualify for this job. Not at all. Carrie made a point to tell me every reason why I should not take this job. No, every reason why I shouldn't take the job. So here I am thinking, oh yeah, it's a recycling job. It's all good. I'll just say I love the environment. It's all good. I'll convince them and I'll get a job. Now, the employment placement lady's like, no, you don't want this job. Here's why you don't want this job. And here's what she tells me. She says, first of all, it stinks. Obviously, it's disgusting. Like it stinks so disgusting. Second of all, it's on a conveyor belt. So the way the recycling sorting works is it's piles and piles and piles of garbage, basically, that gets dumped onto a conveyor belt that's moving, I don't know, fast, honestly. It's like 40 kilometers an hour. Like it's honestly fast as fuck. And so Carrie explains, there have been big, burly men, tough men, truckers, whatever, these types of men that start this job and are leaving after 1 hour, bent over, puking. Because it is so disgusting, it is so uncomfortable, and it is so disorienting. This job is not, you don't want this job. Now, if you've been listening to me on this podcast, you would know, and even this was before I did all the pickup artist stuff and everything. It was before everything, and yet here I am in 2016 at 21 years old, and I'm like, wow, this is the most exciting thing I've ever heard. Something about a job interview where the woman is spending all of her time convincing me why I shouldn't take the job. No, you can't. You don't want this job. Do not take this job. This is not a job you want. This is not a job where people last a day most of the time. You can't do this job. Big, tough men don't do this job. And I'm like, okay, got it. Understood. Well, the more you tell me all this, the more I want the job. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Like the performer in me who wants to seek out uncomfortable, different situations in life. Yeah, no, I want this job. Are you kidding me? Because what else? Oh, should I go to town and get a fucking job as a cashier at the grocery store? No, I'm bored of that. I want the garbage job, or the recycling sorting job. So I do get hired, which is great. And I go to my job, and this was actually so cute. My mom and Camelia were in town, like visiting the week I started the job. And so they drove me and dropped me off, which is so sweet, because eventually what I was doing, by the way, I brought my bike to the cottage. I had a bicycle and I just rode my bike there and back. I remember this summer I got extremely lean because it was constant physical activity. The bike ride was like 35 minutes there, 35 minutes back. Beautiful bike ride, but that's not trivial. It's a decent ride, especially with the there and back. So my mom dropped me off for my first day. I get placed on PET. I get placed on those plastics because basically the way garbage sorting works, at least at this job, there's a whole series of placements of like where someone belongs. And at the front of the line, we call the job garbage. So there's at least one person, but if we're staffed up correctly, there's two people working across from each other on the conveyor belt, just sorting out garbage. So basically, even though, yes, we are recycling, we are recovering recyclables, we are sorting through recyclables, the materials that are getting sent on the line are often garbage. It's often garbage. And we don't want the sorters to waste time and energy sifting through soaking wet, disgusting garbage as much as we want to be sorting through the plastics and the aluminums. So the first role on the line is to basically just rip open bags, garbage bags, recycling bags, and then you sprawl out the material. Oh God, guys, I wish you could see. Like, this is one of my favorite things in the world. It's so weird to describe, but like shred it open. These materials are coming down the line fast. So think about how fast you have to grab a bag, rip it open. So like use your lats, like use all of the muscles in your arms and your back and your core to rip it open. And then you have half a second in front of you to see the materials that were revealed from that bag. Is it good or is it bad? Is it mostly recycling or mostly garbage? Because if it's mostly garbage, the next thing you do, take your fucking arm before it gets all the way down the line. I take my arm and almost hug. I'm like hugging my arms around a pile of garbage. And then I'm going to, with that hug, drag it into this hole that's next to me. And that's like the garbage dump. So It's my job, if I'm working at the front of the line in garbage, to decide, is this good? Like, is this plastics that's going to get sorted down the line? Or is this just wet, slimy garbage? Because if it's wet, slimy garbage, I basically have to like immerse myself in it and then throw it where it belongs. And it, like, working the garbage position on the line was the most physical, because it was the most physically involved. Like, it was like, really, I'm putting myself in the garbage. I would do this job today if I could, for free. I would do at least one shift for free, one shift, or like 2 hours for free. I would do just like recreation. It would be a great workout, basically. The next position on the line is HDPD. So that's like the plastics you find usually from detergents, laundry detergent. That's what it is. A lot of the bigger pieces are HD. So whoever's working HD, you're just basically looking at all the materials have been like semi-sorted and revealed and spread out by the people working garbage. But the line in front of you, the conveyor belt, is still packed full of stuff. And so even the person working HD, well, yes, we are sorting for that plastic. That person is also sort of participating in spreading out the pile of garbage so that it gets flatter and easier to see. Because it's easy for the HD person to usually sort those big pieces of plastic. So you're kind of like helping to create the spread. The line is still moving. The next section that we're sorting is basically every other PT, every other plastic. Every other one that's not number one, that's not PET. So that's every other plastic. Basically, like if you turn over anything, I'm just seeing if I have plastic in front of me. What is this? We have in front of me... See, I wouldn't even know how to sort this. What is this? Okay, perfect. It's 5. So it's some random ass number. This would be mix. So that's exactly it. The first section of the line is garbage, where you're just ripping open garbage bags, recycling bags, and spreading it all around. And anything that is pure garbage, just got to be quick and get that garbage off the line as fast as possible. The next line is HD. And also spreading out the line to make sure that it's easy to see what's going on. The next one is all other plastics. We call this section mix plastics. So it's everything else that's not HD, and it's everything else that's not HD, PD, and everything else that's not PET. So it's kind of like a free-for-all. A lot of things go into that one, a lot. But then there's also a tremendous amount of shit that goes into the PET, because that's like basically every single water bottle ever, among many other plastics. And after that, it's aluminum. So it's just sorting for like any aluminums, any tin foil. There was a magnet on the line to do some of that work for us, but it helped to have a person there, because there are some things that didn't get picked up by, like literally like tin foil doesn't get picked up by the magnet. I think they're like some big, like if you have like a big baking sheet or something, it could like ruin the magnet or something. So it's good to have someone working that part, kind of, it's the last person in the line, except for, and again, I was working when we were understaffed. So sometimes we would have enough staff, sometimes we wouldn't. But after that, the actual last position on the line is glass. Glass made the least amount of money, so it was the least important position to protect. But I got to work glass sometimes when we did have the staff. And it's very simple. You just basically see whatever clear glass there is goes with clear glass, and whatever color glass there is goes with color glass. And that's it. That's the line. Rinse, repeat. And basically every shift, halfway through the shift, someone rotates down the line. So what it would mean is on a full staff day, what I really loved, because again, I loved garbage, even though it was the dreaded task. I think something about me, the way I worked and the way I operated, was I was the most excited about the most dreaded task at the garbage place. So the first position in line is garbage. And if it was a full staff, that meant that I got to work garbage for a full shift, because I got to start my shift in garbage. And then halfway through the shift, when we would rotate, I got to rotate to the other side of garbage. So I would do a full shift in garbage. Then, the next rotation would be I do half a shift in HD, and then I rotate and do half a shift in mix. Got it. Then rotate half a shift in PET, and then half a shift doing aluminum. Then half a shift doing glass, and then from glass you move back to the front of the line into garbage. The reason for this is, like any good factory work, there's rotation so that people don't want to kill themselves. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's just, you get miserable, right? And everyone has their preferences. Like, my least favorite place to work on the line Well, like, least remarkable place was HD. Honestly, I didn't really care for it for whatever reason. I don't know why. It just didn't inspire me. The other least interesting place was mixed plastic. I found mixed plastic to be very flimsy, so it was sort of like harder to find a hand-eye coordination flow state with it all. But the cool thing about mixed plastic is like almost anything goes, so you can't go wrong. With PET, I really liked PET because there's a way that you could flick. So why I found this job to be so fun is that once I got a hold of everything, once I got a hang of everything, because you have to think, it's not just sorting and being good at sorting. Like, the first few shifts are literally about learning how to identify the materials. It gets to a point where all of this knowledge happens on autopilot. You got to think, in my first few shifts working garbage, I was slow, I was picking things up, I was looking at what kind of plastic they are, but eventually it would escalate to me without even thinking, without missing a beat, without hardly even looking. Sometimes even wearing gloves, because of course we have our like safety materials on, even wearing gloves, I could sometimes feel the density of the plastic through my glove, and I would just know, which is cool, but that comes with an experience. And I really loved working PET because there's a weight to the plastic that's like it's really the most fulfilling flow state of hand-eye coordination, because it's not just, pick up recycling and throw it. I could find myself almost playing the line as if it's like a musical instrument. And that would be really fun, because sometimes I'd put on music. I'd listen to my headphones. I'd put on music and I'd have garbage coming and I would just like play it in rhythm with my music. And I got really good, actually. I got really good at this. I took a lot of pride in being really good at sorting garbage. It was not without guidance. I think what happened was I got to earn some respect from the team. Probably when I first got hired, they didn't think much of me because I'm just like a little girl coming in, 21-year-old girl, happy little pretty girl coming into this job. They probably thought, she won't last. And yet I kept coming back. And within a week or two, and here I am, like, I'm pushing myself because I am a performer. Like, I want to do my best. I want to over deliver. I want to do too much, basically, is what it is in terms of performance. One guy, I think he must have been watching me, and he gave me some advice. He gave me some technique advice that totally changed the game. He was watching on how I was throwing. I was doing too much to just remove plastic, basically. Because just to be clear, what's happening on this conveyor belt is you're picking it up off the line and throwing it into like a compartment in front of you. You almost can't miss, you know what I mean? And the speed is the answer, always. You got to go not speed as in MDA, drugs back at Whistler. I mean, fast. Going fast and getting it right, because you got to sort the right plastics into your section. And so this guy noticed my technique, it was too rigid, and he explained how I should be using more of like a flick of a wrist, the way you almost send a frisbee. And that's it. That's the secret to sorting recycling. Once he gave me this technique, it was fucking game over for you bitches. I was going to fuck up everyone's day with my sorting, because it was like, the flick of the wrist. As long as I'm flicking and I'm flicking, it's the minimum effective dose of being as fast and effective as possible without ever really like doing much, because I'm actually just like tossing things in with the right flicking technique. It's beautiful. And I really loved my flow states working on the PET, because what would happen is right in front of me, like right before me, is mixed plastic, and right after me is aluminum. If I was in a really good flow state, I could find myself and I started doing this behavior because I observed other people on the team doing it. I wasn't so audacious to like invent new ways of working. I just kind of look around me and I see like, okay, well, what are the people who've been working this job for 15 years, literally, you know what I mean? Small town, Ontario, like it's this type of thing. What are the people who've been working here for 15 years doing? And I would just kind of copy them once I got better. And so I noticed like I could sort PET, mix, and aluminum all at once. Like it's almost like I suddenly have 8 arms. It's beautiful. It was such a cool experience. And the reason why I'm discussing my garbage experience is because what would happen is for this summer, when I was 21 years old, I worked that job for the entire summer. So from end of May through to end of August, I was nonstop biking and listening to audiobooks, podcasts, and music, nonstop working and listening to audiobooks, podcasts, and music. And then on my off time, I was honestly living the best life possible. And this is where I could never relate to my coworkers for obvious reasons. Some of these guys that work in the garbage of it all, they've been working there for over 10 years. They're literally the epitome of like small town Ontario. Some of them were like living in tents in their families' backyards. Like it was like that. I was returning to a much better situation. And so on my off days when I wasn't sorting, I was butt naked in the sun. I got the best full body tan ever. It took my pale skin. It took all summer long. And as soon as summer was done, it took 2 weeks for it to leave, but it still happened. I was butt naked all the time. I was swimming. I was like enjoying freedom. I was feeling really peaceful. I was even experimenting with more magic mushroom trips throughout the summer when I was alone. Like I really was feeling like I was, if not healing, like I was starting to kind of like embody myself in a way I never had. And I was working this job that it was like, I think the reason why that summer was so healing is because if I think about it, I had the presence of masculine and feminine energy really in my life. Like the job was very masculine, extremely masculine. And then when I wasn't on the job, I was very feminine, very, very go with the flow, very attuned, very soft, very loving, very nurturing. That's how I felt when I wasn't on the job. When I was on the job, it was about being hard. It was about being disciplined. It was about like just being a fucking badass motherfucker. It felt very, even though I want to be clear, when I showed up to the job, I always actually felt still I carried that feminine energy through, but the nature of the job was masculine. And so I felt in line with my feminine energy with a masculine output. It was very interesting. And when I was listening to podcasts, now you got to think, these are 8-hour shifts full time. And the biking commute, still listening to stuff. I was binging information. I was binging podcasts. I was binging audiobooks. It was easy work. You know, like depending on what your lifestyle is, it could be hard to get around to a podcast. Maybe my podcast is hard to get around. Maybe it's hard to get around these long episodes with all this yapping and going. And you know, like, how do you make time for this? When do you make time for this? Are you walking your steps? Are you sitting in a car? Like, how do you stay on top of it? Well, when I was working in the garbage phase of my life, it was like a matter of how do I fill up my time with more shit? I need more shit. And eventually, because, you know, podcast homepages or whatever they promote, whoever the leading shows are, and the Tim Ferriss show was definitely one of the top performers of 2016. And I was curious. I knew he was the author of the 4-Hour Workweek, so like I kind of knew about Tim a little bit, and so I just curiously click over into whatever episode, and I start listening, and I don't remember what it was, but I enjoyed it. I like the format. I like how Tim thinks. I like how Tim asks questions of his guests. Like I liked it, so I just kept listening to Tim, because again, it's not about the scarcity of time and therefore choosing a quality podcast. That's my point. Like, if you're choosing to listen to my podcast, I'm flattered and I'm grateful, because I know even in this episode, I've yapped, I've opened up loops, I've opened up threads, and time is precious, right? So to fill out this time with the podcast means a lot to me. Whereas back when I was 21 years old, it more so was that I had the abundance of time with my headphones and I needed shit to fill it up. So something like the Show Ahora podcast would have been absolutely perfect for me back then, because it's just, I could knock out probably 5 episodes and then the shift's done. That's if I do regular speed. Now, if I'm really like churning through, I could just do 2x speed, you know? So when I was working the garbage line, my favorite part of the job was that I was basically finding myself getting paid to do this. I was getting paid to learn, because I was learning so much through podcasts and audiobooks. And I really was. I was really learning good shit, especially when I was listening to the Tim Ferriss show. He has a lot of amazing experts on there that would then lead me into like looking into their books, and then I'd go and get their audiobook. Like, it was a really full stack immersive summer experience in terms of audio lessons. And I had the physical outlet. So keep in mind, you know, I mentioned the Whistler experience and how I was like really depressed, and I really was. And I felt like I had like demonic anger, just I had like bad things in me. Well, you know, it was interesting when I was working on the garbage line, it felt like such an appropriate outlet, because sometimes what I would do is I would almost simulate the feelings and sensations that I had previously been feeling when I was in Whistler, when I was feeling possessed by a darkness. And so I would get myself in there, but I would do it while I was on the garbage line. And then what I would do is I would start to work and sort through the energy of those feelings in my body. And so I would sort through anger, and that was good, because what was so good about it is I could fully sort through anger, the emotion or experience of anger, and no one knows, because no, first of all, no one's looking. You know, it's like me and 5 other people working on the line, 5 other men working on the line. No one's looking. It's loud. We're all focused on what we're doing. And here I am, like, I'm sorting angry, which means I am picking up the glass bottle, and I'm not just sorting it. I'm fucking whipping it. I'm whipping it. Like, I'm breaking shit. I'm getting paid, and it's okay. So I had the infotainment and I had the physical outlet at work. And what would happen is, before I even knew what the fuck ayahuasca was, before I knew that I was going to work with ayahuasca, before anything, through my binging of the Tim Ferriss podcast, eventually I would get upon the episodes where he was discussing his experiences working with ayahuasca, or he had guests on who were somehow affiliated in the conversation of ayahuasca. And there I was, just listening the way I would listen to episodes all day long at every shift. And I found it to be really interesting. Now, that's all. Just interesting. Just interesting. That's all. That is it. I just found it to be interesting. And some of why I found it to be interesting is because Tim was explaining how in his experience working with ayahuasca, part of why, or like what was happening, was he felt himself to be... I'm paraphrasing based on something that I haven't thought about in years. So that's why going to check out Tim's episodes, if you're curious, will be useful. But what stood out to me, he said something like he had so much extreme anger. He had so much repressed anger. I think he described himself as being like 90% anger for a time. And after he had his experience with ayahuasca, that 90% dropped down to like 60 or something like that. I'm definitely probably making up these numbers a little bit, but that was sort of the picture he illustrated. Was somehow it was after ayahuasca that there was a serious, recognizable difference in his inner world experience. It was different. Something had changed. He also made sure to include that in that first experience working with ayahuasca, he was all fucked up and scuffed up afterwards, because when he worked with ayahuasca, he went into a seizure. He had a seizure. He was seizing, like, for a while too, apparently. He was seizing. So he was all scraped up because he was just like convulsing in a seizure in response to drinking ayahuasca. Which is why I am grateful that the first person I ever heard talk about these things was Tim, because he made sure to really make it clear what a nightmare it could be. Like, he really made it clear that, yes, this helped me in this way. It was like such tangible, real help. And yet just be mindful that to get that kind of help, Tim had to have a seizure for like a couple of hours. Can you imagine? I don't know if it was a couple of hours, but I know for sure he had a seizure. That sounds so scary. So I think nothing of it, honestly. Like, I just keep listening to the Tim Ferriss show, or I keep listening to audiobooks, or sometimes when I needed a hit of dopamine, I would switch to music, you know, like at a shift where I could feel myself waning. I could feel myself slowing down. I could feel myself wanting to go home. I could feel myself checking the clock. That was a thing. Like, I could feel myself looking at the time often, looking at the time just to see like how much is left before the next break or before the end of the shift. And if I found myself in those moments of being sort of like depleted, obviously I get off of an audiobook or get off of the podcast and I go switch into some really heavy music. Really fast, heavy music would be great. So yeah, working the garbage line was amazing because I felt like so much transformation happened on that line. Like, I think the reason why I remember that experience as one of the best experiences of my life is because so much was happening in one little place, like in this one little chamber of heat. Oh yeah, because it was summer, you know, so it would get hot too. Like this one hot, stinky, disgusting chamber of garbage. It was so purifying. It was so healing. It was such... And you know what? That kind of represents the summer too, right? Like, there was like this masculine presence in my lifestyle, and then this feminine opposite of like the life I was living when I was not working was so soft and succulent, you know? It's just like so feminine. It was so feminine. And it's almost interesting to see how like the contrast exists in the nature of the work too, where the work is so fucking disgusting, so physically hard, so demanding. And yet internally what was happening was like a lightness. So it really did feel like some sort of purge of sorts. And the term purging will become relevant when I go into the next part about ayahuasca and really talk about that specifically and how purging works. But it really was this purifying experience. And one day I found myself walking in my family's cottage when I was not working. And in fact, I actually found an excerpt about it in this journal. And so I'm going to see, here. And I'm going to start reading from here. September 22nd, 2019. Copa Airlines Flight 423, headed to Panama City for layover. It begins now, this surreal experience that started with a voice in my head 3 summers ago saying, "You're going to Peru to drink ayahuasca." I remember standing halfway up the steps at the cottage. The first half of those steps, I was feeling lost about what I'm doing and what it is I want to be doing. And that voice hit me. Not my voice. It was something else. I sound nuts, sitting here at Gate 64 in Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport, barely knowing a word of Spanish, with everything I'm packing fitting in my 20-liter backpack, my school bag, etc., etc. So you see there, what happened was, I was just having some sort of inner world reflection on my own time at my family's cottage. And I actually do remember without reading that journal. I did not need the journal reminder to know that this happened, that I was walking upstairs, up a flight of steps, and I was just in my overthinking mind churning through thoughts and reality. And I guess I was thinking about exactly that. Like, I don't know what I want to be doing or what I should be doing. Keep in mind, if that was a reflection I was having in 2016, that means that I had not yet worked with the world's largest pickup artist company. I had not done those things. I had not finished any kind of meaningful school. I was just a girl working garbage. You know what I mean? Like that, what am I doing? I love my job, but what am I doing? And I'm also doing this only for the summer. I had my girlfriend Camelia back in Montreal. She was actually looking at apartments for us. We ended up moving in together. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And there I am, sort of churning through these existential thoughts about who I am, what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. And I felt this voice. I remember which step I was standing on. I remember where I was looking, and I remember it stopped me in my steps because it did not feel like my voice. It felt like a voice. And it said exactly those words. It said those words. "You're going to Peru to drink ayahuasca." It's so funny. So funny. Because, it's funny how the mind works. Like, obviously, here I am saying, it wasn't my voice. It was some other voice. I mean, no, it happened in my head. Of course, it was my fucking voice. I'm not that delusional. And yet, it's interesting how the nature of that voice shows up in a way where it feels like it's intrusive. It feels like it's popping up as some sort of divine intervention. And maybe it is, right? Like, that's a download. That's a download. There I am setting the stage for, I don't know who I am or what I'm doing. What should I be doing? What should I be doing in this life? What should I be doing? And then suddenly there's some clarifying parting glimpse of, you're going to be doing this. And in that moment, all I could feel is like a submission, because it wasn't a thought that happened after I was wondering, what should I eat for lunch? What should I eat for lunch today? Oh, you're going to go to Peru and work with ayahuasca. No, it was after having the thoughts of like, who am I and what am I doing? Then I have this thought of, no, you're going to go do this. And I think, okay. Now, of course, I have the thought in 2016 and I wait until 2019 to actually work with the medicine. And there's a reason for this, because actually, for one, I wasn't like ready to jump into that experience. For two, I needed to save money for the experience also, because to go to Peru, it's the travel costs, the retreat costs, whatever, all of it. And for three, I didn't want to rush in because I did want to give myself time to make sure that I was being very mindful and careful and being prepared with any possibilities. Because again, my initial source of information was always Tim Ferriss. And I found he did a pretty good job of those conversations. But of course, once I was resolved that I was going to go do this, I started to go and look at more things. I'd watch more documentaries about ayahuasca. I'd go listen to the Joe Rogans on ayahuasca. Like, I'd go everywhere else from my ayahuasca sources just to start to gather a bigger idea of what it is that I think I'm going to be doing. So the way I operate is not, I'm not rushed to make shit happen. It's like, oh, I know it's happening, but now let me make sure I conduct myself as responsibly as Tim has insisted I do. Tim insisted that I treat this experience as if I'm getting brain surgery. And so I I did all of the research I possibly could. I looked for all of the bad. I looked for all of the good. I looked for all of the ugly. I looked and I looked and I looked as much as possible just so I had the fullest understanding. I looked at all the possible places in Peru where I could drink ayahuasca. I read all of the reviews. Like I really put a lot of time and care into everything. And it was a few months later that I would go to the RSD event that eventually I made my YouTube video about. So it was interesting that, you know, I'm not going to get into the pickup stuff because I literally already talked about it in the previous episodes. But it's interesting that the whole time I was working with the pickup artist company, I also knew that I had this thing on my mind that I wanted to do. And I think the greatest gift I could have ever given myself ever in terms of timelines and serendipity is I had an out always, because this intrusive voice about working with ayahuasca was present before the pickup artist recruited me. And as much as if you would have listened to the story of me working with the pickup artist, as much as like that was exciting and I was going to definitely not let anything get in the way of me in that opportunity, definitely not. When I started to feel the disillusionment in the company, when I realized like, oh, I'm not going to be RSD Spencer, that's not happening for me. And then when Vlad got removed, this was the time, like, I don't know if I already had it booked exactly, but it was definitely by 2019, if not end of 2018, when I was still working with them, I was putting Peru on the books because I knew not to optimize for my success in the company anymore. Now it was just a job. And so I wanted to go on vacation. But of course, when I quit. And then eventually I worked for free in Vlad's agency with his little like YouTubers or whatever the fuck. And, you know, when I was leaving Vlad's agency and I was becoming disillusioned of my mentor, and again, I wasn't making money, there were a lot of issues coming up. And again, for that, I'm grateful to the whole ayahuasca experience, because these issues would have never presented themselves had I not had the trip booked. So it's like the world got to really, really be in reaction to my one thing that I knew I was going to do. Like, oh, I'm doing this thing. Like, I'm going to go for the ayahuasca, which meant when when my departure date was coming up and Vlad knew I was leaving and everything, I started to notice he was getting stressed. And it was really obvious to me that he was getting stressed. And he was really taking it out on other people on the team, not on me, but he was really being like a weirdo. And I kind of figured what was happening. And finally, I kind of got him to reveal what was happening, because it turned out he was just really stressed that he wasn't going to have access to me anymore. And I think he was also really stressed that I maybe wouldn't come back after my trip, because my trip was a month long. I think he was stressed I wouldn't come back. And the thing is, though, I did leave on the terms of like, look, I said, look, I'll probably come back. You know what I mean? Like, what else do I got going for me once I was there? Like, I don't have to pick up artists anymore. I'm kind of at ground zero. I already have my foot into your agency. Like, I'll probably come back. But for the sake of me being in Peru for a month, obviously I'm not going to be working. Like, count me out. Basically treat this as if I'm resigning, but I would like to come back. That's my thought. And he was worried that he didn't have an executive assistant anymore. And I pointed out that, like, because first of all, at the time I was like, well, I'm kind of sick of being EA anyways. Like, I've been EA for 2 years. I'm more interested in being project manager for marketing projects, obviously. But there were other people on our team in the agency who were really good, really willing participants who really wanted to clearly be closer to Vlad as it was. And so I suggested, like, oh, well, why don't you see if so-and-so would want to be EA? Like, he seems really organized. He seems really good. He seems really keen. Like, I was just noticing talent on the team, and I knew, like, he'd probably be a really good candidate for this. And then Vlad said the dumbest thing ever. Vlad said exactly what I knew he believed. In my opinion, what was dumb is it's these things where you got to keep some cards closer to your chest. So he said, no EA executive assistant. No, EA has to be a girl. That's what he said. In that moment, it was like the full bubble burst. If there's any bubble of illusionment left, it was done then. Because in that moment, it's like, bro, I already know, because I'm not dumb. I already know you harbor that belief. I can tell. It's obvious. Like, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. It's obvious that you prefer a model where your subordinate, your executive assistant, is a girl. I could tell. It's the fact that you said it out loud to me is crazy. Like the fact that you would reveal your cards, that's how it felt. It was, are we not bluffing anymore? What happened to bluffing? You know, nowadays people are like, where did the yearn go? No one yearn. You know what? Are we not bluffing? Where's the bluffing? Where's the game? Where's the duplicity? Because you know what? As much as Vlad needs his EA to be a girl, I need my piece of shit boss to be a little more cunning and manipulative. I need my manipulator. I need my manipulator groomer who's sourcing my life force energy and my work ethic to move his projects forward. I need him to play into my psyche better. Because the thing about me, you could manipulate me. I'm someone you can manipulate. I mean it, for real, obviously, you know, like it takes one to know one type of thing. Like the reason why I think I can play game against other people is because I can feel other people playing against me. Like it takes one to know one. And so when Vlad just said, no, EA has to be girl, I thought like, well, does he never want me to come back? Because now I can't be EA, like out of principle, because I can't just be that girl for him. Are you kidding me? That's a crazy thing to say. He could have said anything else, but that was like, it was like the gift of, again, timing, and again, my brain being a pattern recognizing machine. When these things are said, it's not like in the moment I'm like, oh, oops, you shouldn't have said that. It's just in my head because I am playing. Whereas he didn't know how to bluff. He folded. He didn't keep his cards close to his chest. When he said that, I kept my cards close to my chest. I didn't show him that was like an eye roll, that was like the final nail in the coffin. I didn't show that at all. I just kept playing my game. I kept being like, okay, well, we'll see. You know, I got to live this month in Peru and see what happens. And like, you know, I'm working with ayahuasca, so who knows? After the experience, I may not want to do this. And then I'm going to be open to that, because if it is like open heart surgery or brain surgery or whatever the fuck, like I need to be open to whatever happens on the other end of this experience. Like this is me basically saying to myself, finally, I'd been wanting to do this since I was 21 years old. And I had this epiphany moment on a staircase in my family's cottage. The summer I was working in garbage, I had that epiphany. I researched and sat with my intentions for years until I was 24 years old. I'd broke my sobriety spell. I'd worked with my dream company. I'd been disillusioned by my dream company. I'd been disillusioned by my cult guru leadership. Like I'm at a place where I'm pretty much a clean slate, open book, because I've lived aspects of life to have really decent downloads of reference experiences, but I know that I'm not in the life for me. And so obviously this journey into Peru is some sort of willing step in a direction of finding clarity for me in my life, obviously. Another thing Vlad wanted to do was pay me for my absence, which I thought was dumb. So I worked for free for the few months prior, but he wanted to pay me while I was gone. And this was the first time I said no to him, like hard no. Hard no. No pussyfooting, no nice girl act, because he saw a lot of that for a long time. Like no submissive behavior, no nothing, just a no. And here's why. And I made it clear too, because I made sure to fight. It was a power struggle. He's like, no, I'm going to pay you. Too bad. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not going to pay me when I'm gone. No. And I explained like, I want to be in this experience like energetically free. If your entity is paying me when I'm there, then no. Like at that point, I'm like, I have nothing more to explain. No, because it is energy. It is energy. It really is. And when working with something like ayahuasca, which I hadn't done yet, but I had a hypothesis. I thought there's no way I want the energy of your pity money or like control. I thought it's control money, because why pay me when I'm gone? So I come back? Pay me before, you idiot. This is dumb. So I said no. And he was like, no, I will. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're really not. Because I don't want that. Like this actually would piss me off, honestly, if you pay me. It's going to piss me off when I'm gone if you pay me. It really would, because the energy is like imposing of my experience. Like, no, when I'm gone, consider me gone. And we'll talk when I'm back. We'll talk when I'm back from my retreat, because the retreat itself was only 2 weeks long. And then we'll talk in the 2 weeks after, because I plan to stay in Peru for 2 weeks for the 2-week integration period. And that's exactly what I did. When I went to Peru, I went to Iquitos and I stayed there for a month. I had my first few days just grounded, staying at a little hostel. And then I had 2 weeks in the Amazon rainforest, which is where the retreat was. The retreat was called Temple of the Way of Light. I ended up choosing it because it was very reputable and very expensive though. But that's kind of what I was like paying for, the security and safety of it, right? Like if you're going to go get some invasive procedure done, like a cosmetic procedure or something, you're probably going to be willing to pay top dollar in order to get the top experience. That was my logic, at least. Even the author of The Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Dr. Gabor Mate, his own video, he has like a testimonial on the website for this Temple of the Way of Light. And I thought, well, Dr. Gabor Mate endorsing this thing, like this is probably the best of the best that I could possibly get, outside of just being invited into like an inner circle. Because that's my other thought, is probably the coolest way to take ayahuasca is to be somehow included into a ceremony, not to pay your way in. But hey, I was working with what I had access to, and what I had access to is the drug tourism of it all. So in the next episode, I know it was a lot of groundwork. We didn't even, ayahuasca part 1, and we barely even talked about it. But there's a reason for this. It's because we're talking about my experience with ayahuasca. And I feel like it's really important to illustrate where I was and who I was and how I was thinking leading up to it. And it's really interesting also, after everything I've said in the previous episodes here of Shoahora, that you understand like what kind of workaholic little sicko I was in so many shapes and shades of my life. And you know, there I am landing in Peru and feeling like, wow, I slept from 3 p.m. to 10 the next morning. It was my first night of defenseless sleep. Like, it's so sad to read that. Not sad, but it's like interesting for me to read that, because that's how I looked at my time with that company, that I was in cortisol, I was in stress. And when I was working with Vlad, it was always stressful. Like everything was stressful. And that's kind of how life is though, like in big, successful, multi-million-dollar companies with big personalities and like a lot of demand. It is stressful. I'm not against stress, but it's just so sweet to reflect that like I gave myself the gift of the opportunity to step away from it when I was still young. And I think that is the gift, is I got to do that when I was still young. Because imagine if I invested in the way I was living for like 10 years and then it broke, then the spell broke. And then in my 30s, I have to fucking unfurl all the threads of like everything. No, I think what's cool about me is I always started my personal journey, my self-help journey, very young. And it's like there are layers to the game, you know, like 14 years old is when I just started thinking about self-help. 24 years old is when I started working like with deep identity level changing medicinal properties. 26 years old is when I get hit by a car. All of the rest of my 20s is me working through who I am after getting hit by a car. And then here I am now today recording this. Like I'm still kind of, the funniest thing about all this storytelling is I'm still me in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like I'm still like just this girl. I'm still this girl going through the motions. The difference is now the person who's recording this is the person who's like funny about it all. Definitely clearly healed compared to aspects of my previous self. And like far more integrated. I have a lot more levity. I'm like way more silly and I'm way more tough and my boundaries are a lot fiercer. And so it's cool to be adding these conversations into Show Ahora because this is the container to capture me now. And the more time I spend unpacking what happened throughout the 20s and the decisions and everything, the better. Because I really, like, as much as this is like a self-serving yap for myself, my intention obviously is that I'm looking to connect with some part of you too. And I hope that is the case. So, you know, I'll jump into the part 2 and we're going to get right into the Peru part. No more Vlad, no more pickup artists. Now we're in Peru. I'm going to be unemployed. I'm going to be just focused on healing and working with ayahuasca. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you over there.